Welcome to the U-Turn Podcast. This is the place to connect to who you truly are. We're bringing PhDs, experts, and leaders to help you elevate your mindset in your work life and in your love life so that you can see things differently and truly love your world. I'm Ashley Stahl. I'm a career expert, author, and TEDx speechwriter and booker, and I'm excited to bring you in to this week's episode. Okay, U-Turn friends, it's Ashley Stahl here, and as usual, I want to bring you the best onto the show, and that's why I wanted to bring Bob Gentle onto the show. He works with leaders at every stage of business to help them step out in front of their marketing with a very powerful personal brand. And obviously, he does this through many different ways, right? Podcast, YouTube, coaching, masterminds, consulting. And his mission is to help business leaders around the world discover, set, and achieve their goals online. And then build a business that they love. And we know with my team writing and booking so many TED Talks for leaders and change makers all over the world, how much it matters to us that your personal brand is really connected to your soul and to who you are and what you really have to say, not because it's all about you, but because it's not all about you. It's about the world that is getting impacted by you. So I'm excited to also share that Bob's the author of the Personal Brand Business Roadmap, everything you need to start, scale, or just fix your expert business. And I want to talk to him about selling and getting confident. And there's so much more we could talk about here. But Bob, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
No, thank you. It's a real privilege. I was having a look at your podcast earlier, and I hadn't come across it before. 396 episodes. Congratulations. That is a huge, big deal.
Thank you for saying. It's like you don't even notice when you're at something for that long, like at a cruise, and it's just an automatic part of your life. I feel like this podcast is what I like to call a brand island. Like I feel like the internet is full of islands for your brand.
Yes.
And this podcast is like this asset now that just exists and supports whatever I'm doing and whoever needs it. I would love to start with getting some clarity on why personal branding for you? Like, why do you focus on it? Why do you care about it? Any of that.
For me, it's about the little guy on the one hand, that from an energy perspective, it's far more efficient to put our time and our effort and money into a personal brand than it is a corporate brand, because we're hardwired as human beings to pay attention to faces, to pay attention to people in a way that we're not with the visual representation of an organization. So there's an efficiency aspect to this. The other aspect, I guess, is your personal brand will follow you whatever you're doing. So as your interests flow and change, as you niche or pivot, your personal brand and your audience and the people who are into you will follow you rather than you suddenly change direction and you have to ditch everything you've built and start something new. It's bad news, but I think the most important for me is that everybody has something to offer. Everybody has a tribe waiting to happen or a tribe waiting to grow. And the difference between those who have audiences or tribes or movements and those that don't is simply that they have made themselves available for others to have a relationship with, whether that's in person or whether that's at scale as a parasocial relationship. And for me, I like, people are motivated by different things. It's either money or it's impact or it's whatever. But usually there's a mix of things. And I really want to support people in their missions to connect positively with the people who need what they have uniquely to bring to the world. And the personal brand is the best vehicle for that in whatever lens you're projecting it through.
Personal branding, I think, is so powerful in the sense where it's like you put your mark out there, and instead of having to pursue every single thing ever, you invite people towards you. I'm curious, and that's what I love about TEDx. Like we've written more than 100 TEDx talks for people. We've booked more than 1,200 on stage, and the thing that I love about it the most is that it invites, when your talk does well, you no longer are thinking about what to do next. People are thinking about it for you and people are contacting you. What do you think it is about brands that get people to actually reach out? Like, I know a lot of people are going to say authenticity, but I'm curious, what it really looks like to create a brand that gets people to take it further for you by reaching out to you and bringing you opportunities.
I think there's a few things happening there. So let's just say you wrote and presented a TED Talk about why, well, I can't think of a good example now, but you could talk about really meaningful things that aren't big problems or big opportunities. And it's not speaking to anybody's particular pain or their gain, their ambition or things they're trying to avoid. And often for that reason, it's not going to press any emotional buttons. But if you give a really good TED Talk or communicate anywhere really effectively and consistently about something that matters deeply to people and about a transformation that matters to them, and they have the means and the motivation and the money to try and make it happen, you're now the trusted voice. TEDx is a brand that in marketing, we call it a trust indicator. If TEDx had put you on a stage, it's an indication of profound trust in whatever you're about to say. And that will typically lead to, because the TEDx has an audience and a distribution, amplified through this trust indicator, you are positioned ahead of other people who don't have these advantages. So you're going to see those people are going to have to walk past you with opportunity to find somebody else. So it's very unlikely that if you're a good option, people are going to walk past your store, metaphorically, and go pick somebody else who hasn't given a TED Talk, for example.
And when people are stepping into those big opportunities, whether it's a TEDx talk or like putting a lot of videos out on social media or going on a podcast tour, what do you think is the thing that gets them to turn it into actual business opportunities? Because I know a lot of people, that's what they really want. They want to go out there and they want to get something back. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who just want to go on podcasts and hope that people listen and get value. But for the reality that most people are going to do all these marketing things for some sort of return, how do we get the most out of it?
This is a fantastic question. And you'll recognize this. A lot of people, when they want more business, they'll turn to marketing. And for me, marketing is a little bit like preparing the ground. It's about sowing the seeds. It's about watering the seeds, keeping the pest off, making sure the crop grows. Sales is about the harvest. And a lot of people don't like harvest because it's dirty, ugly, smelly work. It doesn't make anybody look good going out in the field, bending over and picking the crop. But everybody loves the marketing. So people will go towards the thing that makes them feel comfortable and easy. Marketing is great because it sets the conditions for wonderful sales. But a lot of people will avoid the sales. And opportunity is typically converted through one of four doors. It either comes, as you described, through content. And if you've got a great brand, that will work even better. So prolific content with a wonderful brand, you look the bomb, everybody loves you, that's going to generate some opportunity. The next door is ads. You can amplify all of that with ads. You pay to play. The next door is relationships and network. A lot of people I speak to, the majority of their business comes through their network. And again, your personal brand and your authority amplifies that. It makes you more referable, and it makes people slide in towards those referrals much more easily. But the fourth door is active outbound sales. And that's the bit most people avoid. And it's interesting that that's where most readily you can convert that value into direct opportunity. So if you have a structured, simple sales process as a companion to wonderful marketing, you can start to control the game much more effectively. Because if I reach out to you, Ashley, and say, hey, Ashley, I'd love to get on a call with you and speak to you about this thing, and I'd value your opinion on it. And I'm just some guy who looks like he tried to sell a telecom service to you. You're going to block me, or you're going to ignore me because you know I'm trying to sell to you. But if I'm some kind of superstar telecoms guy that seems to be talking to all these big names, giving a TED talk, there's something interesting here. You can take this a little bit further and start to incorporate outbound sales with a content strategy. So you might say, so there's a guy I know, every year he writes a book called 100 Digital and Live Streaming Tips. He doesn't write that. He has 100 sales conversations a year with people where he interviews them about things they're good at, but they're also his ideal customer. And as somebody once said to me, if you want more sales, you need more conversations. What we need is a conversation engine. If we can achieve a conversation engine, sales take care of themselves. So that's a very long answer to a short question. Sorry.
No, I think that's a really useful, I even want to summarize. You said 1, 2, 3, 4. You said number 1 was, and then you went into ads. What was number 1?
1 would be content and content marketing.
Content marketing. I want to actually explore all these for people, because I think one of the biggest questions for new entrepreneurs is, how do I get more sales? And I think part of it is just understanding the pie and all the slices that can bring those in. So what do you mean by content marketing? I know kind of how I would perceive it, but curious to hear your take on what content marketing really looks like.
So I often describe success online as a very simple formula. It's visibility plus conversion equals money plus retention equals growth. So if we start with the visibility aspect, for me, I look at content as an opportunity for visibility. So for me, content marketing is as much about a podcast episode as it is about a YouTube video, as it is about ad, to an extent, as it is about my own podcast or a social media post or TikTok or Instagram or search engine optimization. These things all are captured under, for me, the content umbrella. But a good way to understand how to approach this strategically is to look at it almost like an investment portfolio. A lot of people get confused when it comes to content marketing. Should I do TikTok or a podcast or a YouTube channel or a blog? And the answer is usually yes. So let's structure this. If we look at short-term investment strategies, we have ads. You pay to play. You pay your money today. You get it right, you'll get a result tomorrow. But it's not the best use of money for people who don't have any real sales process at the moment. So the next category of investment is the medium-term investment. And this is really where most people put most of their time and effort. In this category, we're looking at social media mainly. Social media, social networking. You start showing up consistently today. In a few weeks, people might start to recognize you, start to think, hey, looks like he knows what he's talking about. If you get some good hooks and some prompts and some calls to action in your content, you actually tell people what you do and that you're available, then people will naturally over time start to reach out to you. There's lots of tactics around that. But for me, and a lot of people, this is a bit of a hamster wheel, and you'll recognize this. It's just the day you stop showing up on social media, it's like everything evaporates and you may as well have never existed. And then we have the long-term content investments. Here we're talking blog, podcast, and YouTube. And the reason I call these long-term investments is it's like investing in a real estate portfolio. The more you invest, the property grows in value. And you'll recognize now that 398 odd episodes of your podcast, you can publish nothing probably for 6 months and hundreds of people will still discover you every week for the first time. That's a true asset. The same will happen with YouTube. The same can happen with blog, but you can't be as visible in a blog. The potency of these long-term investments is you can take them back to the medium term rather, and start redistributing this on social media. Now it's no longer work. Now it's simply reusing what you created, part of your long-term investment.
Mm.
So for me, this is what a content marketing mix looks like. There's other aspects of that. You'll be familiar with the idea of content that's designed for people who are meeting you for the first time. So the top of funnel. Content's designed for those people who kind of know who you are, but you want to really get into the meat of potatoes. This is what we'd call middle of the funnel. And then content for those people who are really deciding who they're going to buy from. Is it you or somebody else? And this is where you really go deep, and often in things like webinars. So that's my whirlwind tour of my take on content.
Okay, so one thing that I struggle with, I've written 700 blog posts for Forbes, and I don't think one of them has done anything like what my TEDx talk has done in 12 minutes for me.
No.
And when I think about the 700 blogs I wrote for Forbes, I just think every single year for 9 years, 5 to 8 blog posts a month. It was a whole project. I spent a lot of money on getting editors to make sure that I could just write it and then it could be done right. It cost a lot. I feel like, yeah, over time, I probably got a few speaking engagements, but the ROI wasn't really there. So when somebody's doing the content marketing bit, what are some of the biggest considerations that you would, you're talking about podcasts and like these real estate investments, which I invest in real estate, so I speak that language. But, and I feel that because, blog posts are not just about the day you release them. It's about every single day people are Googling them. And it does feel like an investment portfolio. You never really know which one is going to do well. Like I remember when I was career coaching, of all the hundreds of blogs I wrote, why did the one about how to write a thank you note to a recruiter bring me the most business? So it's a mystery. So I'm curious how people can start to think about them so that if they're going into blogging or content marketing or podcast tours, there's a way for them to feel confident based on this conversation. Like, oh, this is something I could do to make it a success.
I think to touch on the Forbes TEDx thing, for me, if I were to look at, so one of the things that impresses me with you, for example, is the word Forbes appears on your website. So you could have just written one blog post for Forbes and you would be able to claim that trust indicator.
Right.
TEDx, most people will typically only do a handful of TEDx talks in their career. And it's a very rare kind of golden key. Like, have you written a book? You're an author.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done a TEDx talk? You're a legit speaker. You're probably really good at it. In my industry, if you're going to say you speak in marketing conferences, well, have you spoken at Social Media Marketing World? That's kind of the gold standard. If you can speak at Social Media Marketing World, you can speak anywhere. TEDx is a very rare ingredient in a brand. That it's like pepperoni on a pizza. If you have that, you're going to stand out among the many other people that people could choose from. It's an unquantifiable X factor is how I would describe it. Whether you leverage that fully, that's really the question. And I think having that TEDx speaker badge and simply being a little shy wallflower in the corner hoping somebody picks you, it's not really leveraging the full opportunity that it brings, but using it as a trust indicator to introduce yourself. Hi, my name's Bob Gentle, TEDx speaker, podcaster and author. That's a fully rounded punch in the face of authority. And if you want to speak to a CEO or a director or a vice president or a president, you're going to find it much easier to get in the door than pretty much anybody else.
Yeah.
I guess one way I'd put it is when people are looking to solve a problem, they're considering various options. And there are a few things you can do to make it really difficult for people to decide not to choose you, or at least consider you as an option. If I am looking to, let's say I've done a TEDx talk about the legal profession. Let's say I've done a TEDx talk on some aspect of the law, which is pretty boring, if I'm honest. but probably not for lawyers. And I'm the CEO of the Fortune 200 company. And I'm said to somebody, go find me a lawyer. And I'm doing a Google search for lawyers in my area. And there's Slippin' Jimmy, the local shark. And there's a couple of ordinary looking lawyers. And then there's this guy here who has a YouTube channel and a podcast. And he's a TEDx speaker. My boss will fire me if I don't get the guy with the TEDx talk to come and speak to me first, because they have distinct and obvious X factor over the others. You'll find this a lot. If people are comparing me to other people who kind of do what I do, because I have a podcast and a modest audience, and there are other options that don't, somebody is going to have to be considered extremely foolish not to have at least spoken to. And that's something that a TEDx talk will pretty much guarantee you. People will be punished for not choosing you.
I want to talk about ads because I think a lot of people have a lot of fear about ads. I've been burned by ads professionals. I'm coming to the conclusion that any new business owner should just figure out how to set up an ad by themselves and get somebody on their team to help with that. Once they kind of have the understanding enough to be dangerous with it by themselves. Yeah. I think a lot of people get really scared when they think about spending money with no guarantee anybody's coming. So just curious to hear your take on like that piece of it, of like, how do we decide where to begin with ads? Can you give us a landscape assessment on your end of like where all the ads are that you're thinking about? Because I know there's a bajillion different types of ad sources. I mean, maybe not a bajillion of them, but like everything from Gmail ads to LinkedIn ads to Facebook ads to, Instagram Reel ads, like all of it.
What's really interesting is there's the way the Facebook ads, and I'll probably stick to Facebook ads because for most people, they're the biggest opportunity. Most people who sell Facebook ads make it look kind of complicated and try and paint this picture to us as knowledge entrepreneurs. I think most people watching or listening would probably classify themselves as knowledge entrepreneurs, is my guess. But they sell it to us like some kind of complex process whereby we can completely automate our business development, and we put $1 in the top of the machine and a customer falls out the bottom. It's how it's sold to us. But I have a client who is one of the biggest Facebook ads educators in the world. And I see how he runs his Facebook ads. And what's really interesting is the Facebook ad's only part of the journey. The Facebook ad generates a lead, doesn't generate a customer. And if you were to simply wait for that lead to turn into a customer, you'd be waiting a very long time. He has a telesales team who will follow up with every single lead. So for most of us, this isn't accessible, but what we can learn here is that we need to be fairly proactive and involved in the process and not expect that we can just buy a customer generation machine. So the way I like to look at this, number one, the foundational principle is you cannot multiply by zero. So if you don't have a functional sales process now, you can't really multiply that with ads. So you're going to need to get over your insecurities around following up with a lead who's maybe a stranger. Most people don't like strangers. Nurturing that relationship towards a sale. Because if I ask you right now, what's something you're thinking of buying? Do you have an example of something you're thinking of buying right now?
I mean, in my life in general?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about buying a condo in Miami that I can rent out.
I volunteer as tribute.
You could be the starter.
When did you first think of that?
I've been thinking about it for 2 years.
So what you've described to me is a buying journey.
Yeah.
Anywhere on that buying journey, you might have been exposed to a Facebook ad for a company that sells condos in Miami. And give them an email address if they get things right. But for them to assume you're ready to buy that condo today is ridiculous. Yet that's how most of us run our ads. So we should be using ads to sow the seeds of a relationship to open a channel of communication so that we can stay with people and build a relationship while they're on that buying journey. So for me, the way I like to set it up for clients is we have a really simple lead magnet that speaks to the problem of your ideal customer. So let's say, I use a concrete example. Let's say you're a management consultant and you help people with dysfunctional management teams, because management is the beating heart of business. If you get management right, the rest of business will work fine. The problem is people get hired as new managers with no experience. So we could fix them. So we put together a Facebook ad that says something like, the 5 problems every new manager faces. Click here to download your It for Empowering New Managers. Completely free. I'll give you an email address for that. I'll tell you my name. Might even tell you what company I work for. That then gets pushed through to an email to me. And what I would then get is every time somebody opts in to that lead magnet through a Facebook ad, I get an email that says, hey, Bob, you have a new lead. I'll also automatically push it into my sales CRM so I can start building that relationship with them. The targeting of that Facebook ad is very straightforward. Somebody with a new job role, somebody who is earning over a certain amount, because managers, they tend to be fairly well paid. You can probably say it's over a certain level. And in companies over X size. So we can identify all those things. I'm in danger of running away from myself here, but the simple answer is advertising on any platform will work. It will generate leads if you get the targeting right, if you get the creative right, and you get your expectations right. The wrong way to do it, if you've never run ads, the wrong way to do it is try and put $1 in the top and have a customer come out the other end. Very rarely will that work. If you want to just spend $5 a day, you can probably, with $5 a day, generate 2 or 3 leads a day in most industries. And then you have people to start conversations with. It's very, very straightforward and very easy to do.
I think it's so powerful. And I'm wondering, in a world where there's so many different paid ways to learn how to do paid ads, I always tell people, like, go on Coursera, go on Udemy. Like, it might be outdated. Like, try to find the most up-to-date thing, because ads are always changing. But it's almost like, do you have an opinion on where is the easiest place to set up an ad? Because I think sometimes people look at the Facebook ads dashboard and there's like a pixel and a set and it looks like a whole situation. Where do you feel like is a good place for somebody who's scared of ads to maybe set up their first ever ad?
The easiest is to look up on YouTube for how to set up a basic Facebook ad and then put this year and the end of it. So how to set up a basic Facebook ad 2024. Because there are a few elements to it, but it's very few. If you're in any way vaguely technical, it's going to be quite easy. For me to set up a new Facebook ad for somebody takes about 5 minutes. It's that simple. There are a few tricks, if I'm honest, which if you don't know, you don't know. Facebook will always find ways for you to spend more money than you necessarily wanted, which is why I would advise watching a YouTube video first and not Facebook's advice. But the big tip, if anyone does want to do it themselves, when you get to the placements, actually, where do you want the ads to show up? Delete everything except the Facebook feed. They'll probably suggest another 20, 30 places your ad can show up. Ignore them all. The only one you want is the Facebook feed, or perhaps Instagram.
So good. Okay. Number 3 you said was your network. And I feel like when you don't have paid ads, it's a grind, because it's like you are making content for people to read. Maybe people Google it, maybe they don't, maybe they find it, maybe it takes a while for them to care about it. And then, paid ads is its own thing, but then there's networking. It can feel for some people like you just have to go to every single event under the sun to find one client. It's like this big tree of people and people are just shaking it out, trying to get business. And I know how exhausting that can be. And they're kind of like in the spray and pray with their business cards. Like, how do we get the most out of connected relationships that really do translate into business expansion and also happiness and positivity and not feeling like you're just in the grind?
So I used to go to every networking event under the sun. I built my business on essentially local networking. And what I found was that led to the kind of business where if somebody says, "Hey, Bob, can you walk my dog?" you're going to say yes. Because there isn't enough opportunity in most local communities to support the level of specialization that most people will find rewarding. Most people want to niche. But if you want to niche really well, or niche, as you say in the US, then you're going to need a bigger audience. So that was why I decided, okay, I want to really focus online. And I burned all my bridges. I stopped going to every networking event quite consciously in order to force myself out of my comfort zone, because I'm not an extrovert. I'm not a natural maker of videos or podcaster. For me, that was cripplingly painful in the beginning. Now I love it. But in the beginning, I was way outside my comfort zone, but I needed to be forced to do that. But with networking, there are a few things at play. Number one, network strategically. Where do your ideal clients hang out? And for me, that's why I decided to look at online opportunities. But I'll tell you, if I went back to all the local networking events that I used to go to now, there would be whispers. People would turn around and say, "Hey, stop, gentle." Because my personal brand now is so strong that there's a little bit of a mythology and a legendary status around it. And this is where things begin to interplay. So as a content marketer, I'm creating a persona online that's strong, charismatic, connected. I'm hanging out with influential people quite visibly now because of my podcast, like you. And my network sees that. So if I'm being crude, my status, if you like, has climbed. So I'm now much more referable than I was 5 years ago. So your networking is influenced by your content. Your networking is also influenced by trust indicators, like a TEDx talk. I'm quite sure a lot of your clients, actually, when they walk into a room, people know who they are, they're whispering to each other, TED Talk, because there's a mystique and a charisma around that. So I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I think there's a few perspectives on networking.
I think just making the most out of networking. Like if somebody's going to a lot of events, like I love that you said that you've been to a lot of events. I've done that before. Like when I started my TEDx business and we didn't have ads set up yet, and I was just with my first few clients, it was like, okay, I need speechwriters to support me. Okay, I need an account manager because now I have more clients. Okay, now I need somebody that has the creative direction like me because I can't be on every single account. And like the hustle of just finding people who are better than you at what you're doing. And then it's like, okay, now I got to figure out a finance person because I want to exit my company eventually. Okay, now I got to go to these networking events and get more clients because now I have a team to pay for. Like it's the business grind. So I guess I'm curious, like, how do you choose where to go and how do you make the most out of it? Because I feel like some people are going to talk themselves into going, but then they're going to kind of hide in the corner by the cheese cubes and like not even make the most out of it because maybe they don't know what to do to make the most out of it.
So there's a couple of things there. One, I wish I'd written it down. It was an important point, but I'll come back to it. If you're going to, that's what I wanted to say. The problem with networking is it can be very difficult to scale. If all your opportunities coming through networking, the only lever you have to pull if you want to grow your business is more networking or better networking. So I think networking is great, but as a core strategy, I think it's not that helpful. It's a great supplement. But if you've grown your business and you're really successful and you want to move beyond that, you're probably going to need to look beyond networking. but we can fine tune it. I think looking at where does your ideal client hang out, and for me, that's actually really difficult because my ideal clients are like diamonds in a swamp. So for me, networking is not the best way to do this, unless perhaps I'm going to a big social media conference or a big conference for authors or things like this. So like the National Speakers Association in the US, for example, would be perfect place for me to network because all my ideal clients are there. And I'm also distinctly different from them all. What I would avoid in networking is what I would call the bottom feeder events, which you'll know what I'm talking about. These are the events that are all around us. They're easy to say yes to. They're too easy to say yes to. And another problem is they often work, which creates a vicious cycle of dependency. So local networking events can often give you the illusion of working because you might generate a couple of clients there, but they're never A-list clients. They're always B or C-list clients. And you get stuck in the mud of working all the time with B and C-list clients. It's only when you become really proactive and courageous that you can really lift out of that and start consistently working with the clients you dream about.
There's so much here. Like I think about networking and authentically connecting. Even when I go to a group dinner with my friends, it's hard to really drop in with any one of them because there's like 5 of them. So I imagine networking events are kind of overwhelming. One thing I've done is I've always asked for business cards. I've always like LinkedIn connected after and sent a message. I've always been intentional about my email signature. You'll see my email signature says we've written 100 TEDx talks. We've booked 1,200 people on stage. If anybody is wondering what I do, they'll see it right there. I think also, you talked about outbound sales as the 4th door that you could open. Can you talk a little bit about what that might look like?
So, yes, I'm just very briefly going to come back to the networking events because there are a few things that you can do to really optimize your opportunity. And number one, I guess, is before you get to the event, looking at who's going to be there, what can you do to sow the seeds of relationships before you get there if they're all going to be strangers? So you've got a few friends, because it's going to be easier if you've got friends there. The next thing is at the event, there's a danger you get stuck with your friends. And a lot of people really struggle to navigate a big room full of people. And I actually went on a training course on how to do specifically this once, which is such a weird thing to go on a training course about. But what I realized was if you look at a room full of people at a networking event, if everybody's standing around, they're typically only standing in a few different styles of group. So closed 4 people talking to each other, all facing in, ignore them. 3 people all facing in, ignore them. But you'll find lots of groups of 2 people slightly facing away from each other. Go stand beside them, they'll bring you straight in. Similarly, you'll find groups of 3 people where they've left a gap. You stand beside them, they will bring you into the conversation. And then the only other thing you need is a short introduction to enter a conversation, but most importantly, prepare how you're going to extract yourself from a group of people so you don't get stuck with them for too long. If you get these things right, you can make the most of any event and really rock it. You can speak to 100 people rather than 5 or 6, just with a couple of simple strategies. And then, as you've identified, follow up. Follow up. Everything happens in the follow-up. But outbound sales.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Okay. What if I not asked you about personal brand or marketing yourself that you think is really important for people to know, just as like a final question?
Well, I was going to answer your question about outbound sales first.
Yes, please.
I didn't do that. I just dodged it and went back to even. So, outbound sales, I have a specific process. I've just finished the first draft of a book about this. Outbound sales is probably the only thing that we have that gives us complete control to scale our businesses. So we don't have to wait for people to come to us, but we can try and control the game a little. The problem most people have is that they feel like they're hustling. when they start thinking about outbound sales. So my book and my process is called The Generosity Engine, and it's a social selling process that's designed to add to your brand, to make the person you're selling to feel great, and to get results fairly quickly. And the way that it works, and it works particularly for people who are in the knowledge space, content creators, or where they have strong personal brands, is it allows us to reach out to people who we've identified as potential A-list clients in such a way that they're surprised and delighted that we've reached out to them. We're going out to give them something rather than to ask for something, and to begin a conversation. And then some of those conversations will naturally turn towards, so what is it you do? And the way that I would do this, if, for example, I'm going to risk on the seat of my pants, how would I do this for Ashley? Pick an industry, any industry.
E-learning.
E-learning. So let's say Ashley reaches out and says, I've put together this guide for building a personal brand in e-learning. I'd love your opinion on it, Mr. President of e-learning company, because you look like you've got your stuff locked in. I've put this together. Can I send this to you and you tell me what you think of it?
Mm-hmm.
What you're not doing is saying, hey, I'd like you to look at this because it's sales material. I'm saying, you're the expert. I'd value your opinion. What you now have is a conversation, which is the seed of everything that's to follow. He's potentially going to look at this and go, Ashley, this is awesome. Why have I never thought of a TEDx talk? The difference between Ashley reaching out with that sales approach and some other random is you've given a TEDx talk. You've done this with hundreds of people in lots of different industries. You have a podcast. My God, this Ashley's a big deal. So you can leverage this through the psychology. And your goal is not necessarily to sell at this stage. Your goal is to make a friend. If you do this with 10 people a week, nature will take care of the rest. Similarly, you can use your podcast as a vehicle. If people don't have a podcast, they can do interviews for blog posts or books. There's lots of different ways to reach out in a way that's giving to people, to start a conversation, and then those conversations will naturally segue into sales conversations some of the time, but you don't have to force it. Because Ashley, how many clients do you need a year to be incredibly successful? Not that many.
No.
And it's probably the same for most people listening. So this is a sale process that's designed for you to feel good about yourself. You're going out leading with generosity rather than hustle. And it'll work pretty much for anyone that's listening. I can find a way for this to work for pretty much anyone. And it's entirely scalable.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, final question still is just, what have I not asked you that would be really useful for everybody to know?
My business is partly about the personal brand, but it's mainly about building a business around that personal brand. For me, they go part and parcel. The bigger your personal brand grows, the more the opportunities around that personal brand will grow. And for me, it's about an appropriate or a proportionality as we go. And a lot of people get very confused about this and they struggle. And in order to support that, I put together the personal brand business roadmap that tries to order the chaos, all of the things that you can do. Within that, there are areas of specialism where you need specialist help. So on that roadmap, you'll see, for example, speaking. You'll see podcasting, and there it makes sense to get specialist help from people for whom that's their zone of genius, like Ashley. Then there'll be other people you want to work with on a book. My role for my clients is helping them structure and order the whole. How do we approach building that business around our personal brand strategically and in a way that's authentically aligned with who I am and what I care about? And that's what the roadmap can be really helpful for. So the most important thing I would say for everybody is everybody's confused. All the people that you think have got things locked in, they don't. They're just more consistently, they they've become more comfortable outside their comfort zone and a little bit more comfortable with chaos. That's probably the most important thing.
Where can everybody find you? I know you have masterminds, you lead groups. Like, where's the best place to go?
Everything that you want to know about me, you'll find at amplifyme.agency, or just search Bob Gentle on pretty much any platform. And I'm very easy to find.
I love that. Thanks again, Bob, for coming on.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It's been absolutely lovely to meet you.
You too. Thanks for tuning in to the U-Turn podcast. I hope you learned so much in this episode and you're putting it into action today. We would love to hear from you. Slide into my DMs at Ashley Stahl or leave a written review if you're inspired. It would mean so much to us. Be sure to subscribe to the show because, as you know, the more subscribers we get, the better the guests we can bring you. And in the meantime, if you're looking to skyrocket your personal brand and impact millions, head on over to wisewhisperagency.com to learn more about how we are getting clients booked for the TEDx stage.